So this will be the last topic of this video series of using INE rack rentals. So I'm assuming that at this point, you've already done your initial build lab, where you defined your objectives, you had your certification guide or your foundation learning guide in front of you, opened up with the command reference sheet in front of it. You had built all of your configurations in Notepad or WordPad or something. You started working on the lab, you copied and pasted everything in, you got it working. Great. And as you copy and pasted everything in, maybe stuff didn't work out quite right because that was your first time with the iOS commands. So that was your initial exposure to the iOS commands. Secondly, when you were done with that and you had everything working, you saved it, you saved your configs, and now you started breaking it. You went into the experimentation lab where you broke it, practiced your show and your debug commands to see what the output was. What do I see when this certain problem is happening? So we did all that. Now, this is the final step, the step of what have you learned? Have you actually memorized the commands? And this is what I call memory recall labs. So in a memory recall lab, I would recommend like 60 to 120 minutes should be sufficient for something like this. Memory recall lab will basically be the same thing as your initial build lab. You're going to design a topology. Here's the difference though. This is testing your memorization. You're trying to see what do you know and what have you forgotten. So a memory recall lab is typically going to be more complex than initial build lab. For example, I might start with this initial build lab that I did and say, okay, well, in addition to this, I want to add in EIGRP and redistribute. I want to add in an access list on switch 2 that's blocking telnet permitting ICMP. So in this memory recall lab, my list of objectives is going to be much longer and the topology is going to be much more complex. You're going to want to test yourself on current things you've studied and stuff from the past. You know, maybe right now, today, I just learned about, OSPF, but last week I was studying VLANs and VTP. So this would be a good time for me to work into my topology. How can I incorporate VLANs and VTP into this lab that's also using OSPF? Because I don't want to forget the old stuff. I want to keep bringing the old stuff back, keep bringing it back and keep doing it in the lab over and over and over again. So you're adding layers and layers and layers to your lab. INE workbooks are a prime example of doing a memory recall lab. Our INE workbooks are structured that you'll be given a task, you'll say, here's a topology diagram, and then it'll give you some basic bullet points. Do this, make this happen. But it won't give you the commands to do it. That's like what a memory recall lab is. You're creating something without the commands in front of you. You don't have the configuration guide. You don't have the command reference in front of you. The question is, can you make it happen? Can you make it work based on what you recall, based on what you memorized? And you're going to be doing this in a compressed time with no solutions. So that is a memory recall lab. And as you're doing it, if you're forgetting a command, ask yourself, can I move on right now and get back to that later? Remember, I've got a compressed time here. I've got a compressed window. How much of this lab can I complete before my time work runs out? For example, if you say, oh, okay, I've gotten to the access list section and oh my gosh, I just realized I completely forgot how to do access lists. I don't remember how to do this. Well, you've got a choice. One choice would be pause the lab, which you can't pause it. The time is going to keep ticking down, and open up your configuration guides and research access lists. But that's kind of a waste of time because your tokens are decrementing, your lab is still going while you're doing that stuff. A better idea is just skip that section if you can. If the whole lab is not dependent upon that section, skip it and keep going. And then, if you still have time at the end, go back to that section and do it. But the idea here is to work through as much of this lab as you can that you built, or this lab that you're working on, and test yourself to realize, okay, here's my weak areas, here's the areas where I'm strong. And that concludes this video series on using INE's rack rentals for CCNA and CCNP preparation. I started out by talking about why you would use rack rentals. Then we went into a series of videos on how you use the system, how you see what racks would be applicable for what you want to do. See the rack availability, scheduling time, how do you actually schedule a rack. We talked about loading configurations onto your rack, deleting configurations, how we access the equipment. And then I finished up here with 3 ideas as far as types of labs that you can build and use on our rack rentals. So hopefully, moving forward from this, you're going to feel a lot more confident in using INE rack rentals, and I wish you the best in your certification pursuits. Thank you.